Hello world, my name is Scott Bloomberg. My friend Jeremy Whalen and I are the co-founders of People Against the Corporate Manipulation of Elections and News, or PACmen. Thank you for visiting us at PACmen.org. I put this brief presentation together to give you some idea of what we're all about. I apologize if the audio quality is a little low. After all, we're not billionaires. We're just a couple of average people on a tight budget. So this particular PowerPoint is going to focus mainly on the corporate manipulation of elections. We will have a PowerPoint which will be part 2 for the corporate manipulation of news, and then later a part 3 which will be solutions and a call to action. Before we start, I want to define some terms quickly. A 527 is simply a political nonprofit organization. They're regulated by the IRS. A 501c covers a wide range of nonprofits. But when I say 501c, I'm talking about nonprofits which aren't 527s but do spend money in elections. PACs, or political action committees, are essentially political fundraising organizations. Corporations and unions have PACs which are contributed to by employees, members, or shareholders. Candidates and political party groups have PACs associated with them as well. Then there are non-connected PACs, like us. A non-connected PAC is simply a political fundraising group that isn't tied to a particular candidate, party, corporation, or union. PACs are regulated by the Federal Elections Commission. Another type of PAC is called an independent expenditure only PAC, or more commonly, a super PAC. These PACs can accept donations in unlimited amounts because they don't donate to candidates, they only make independent expenditures, such as running commercials. All of these groups are types of outside spending groups. Groups not tied to a candidate or political party that spend in elections. In 2009, the Supreme Court decided a case called Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, or FEC for short. This case has had a huge impact on election finance laws. Although the manipulation of elections did not begin with Citizens United, the decision has certainly exacerbated the problem by making it really easy for the super wealthy corporations and unions to spend unlimited amounts of money in elections. Sometimes they're even able to spend this money anonymously. Now we think that the Citizens United decision was not only wrong and undemocratic, but also illegal. Evidence has shown that two of the justices, Justice Thomas and Justice Scalia, were somewhat involved with an organization run by the Koch brothers, which has stood to benefit from the Citizens United decision. Also, Justice Thomas's wife actually worked for an organization that has benefited financially from the decision. So on the screen you can see some of the specific ways that Citizens United has changed the laws to make it really easy for wealthy people, corporations, and unions to spend on elections without any limits. So to simplify what has happened since the Citizens United decision, wealthy people, corporations, and unions can legally spend a virtually unlimited amount of money to influence our elections. Now, I do think it is important to quickly point one thing out. We're not focused on unions in the same way that we are focused on corporations. We do think that it's wrong for unions to be able to spend on elections out of their general treasury funds. But unions fundamentally exist to advance the interest of a group, sometimes hundreds of thousands of regular working class people, whereas corporations exist for the sole purpose of making as much money as possible. Now, this whole situation is really, really bad. First, there's more corruption. Millionaires, billionaires, and corporations don't usually spend millions of dollars on political advertisements and donations just for fun. Okay, they do it because they think the candidates that they support will make them more money. As a result, a system is in place where elected officials are indebted to their major funders. This means tax breaks and lax regulations for their donors' industries. Second, there is way more misinformation, especially from the right wing. Think about it. Perhaps the biggest trick of all time has been convincing lower and middle class Americans that it's in their interest for the really rich people to get tax breaks, even if it means massive budget deficits and less funding for basic services for them. This is true of other issues too, besides tax breaks. The oil industry, for example, donates tens of millions of dollars to conservative causes every year. In return, not only have conservatives dished out massive tax breaks for them, but they've also denied the existence of man-made global warming, and have created a massive media campaign to convince people that global warming isn't happening. Why? Because if everyone accepted global warming as a scientific fact, which it is, then there would be a tremendous amount of pressure to end our addiction to oil. That would really hurt oil companies, wouldn't it? Third is what I like to call the imbalance of voice. And simply what that is who is being heard in elections. Is it the people, or is it the corporations and the super wealthy? And that's what we're going to look at next. Take a look at this chart. This chart shows the amount of money that has been spent in election cycles from 1998 to 2010. The fluctuation every 2 years is because of the presidential elections in 2000, 2004, and 2008, where spending is naturally going to increase. But obviously, the overall trend is that the amount of money being spent in elections is increasing a lot. From 98 to 2010, spending in non-presidential election years increased over 240%. That's over $2.3 billion. Now, those numbers alone aren't necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, perhaps, this increase is a result of more election donations from regular Americans. Maybe it's just that, way more people are donating $20, $100, $1,000, or whatever. Unfortunately, that's not really the case. Remember at the beginning of this PowerPoint when we defined the terms of all those outside spending groups? Well, the truth is that there's still strict regulations around contributing directly to candidates and political parties. But funding to 527s, 501c, and super PACs is practically unregulated. So super wealthy people have funneled their money into these outside spending groups. Aside from the huge increase in outside spending, you may notice something interesting about this chart. Through 2008, liberal groups have always outspent conservative groups. Then, in 2010, conservatives vastly outspent liberals. This is a hugely important change that is a direct result of the Citizens United decision. You see, the liberal groups are mostly unions, broad coalitions of regular people pooling their money to support their interests. That hasn't changed since Citizens United. They continue to support their members' interests and not the interests of billionaires. So the question then becomes, who the hell is spending all that conservative money? Well, here's who. Take a look at this list. This is the list of the top 10 outside spending groups in the 2010 election cycle. The 3 liberal groups, that's the groups with an L in the view column, are all unions. The other groups, well, you probably saw their ads in 2010, but you probably aren't sure who they are. So let me tell you. First, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is a name that you've most likely heard. The Chamber is a lobbying organization for large corporations and is a registered 501c. Of the $32+ million that they spent in 2010, 93% of it was in support of Republicans or against Democrats. The Chamber, which takes in over $200 million a year, spent this $32 million from their general treasury funds. What makes this problem worse is that the Chamber gets donations that go into this general treasury fund from foreign-based corporations. Oh, and also they don't need to disclose their donors. Second is the American Action Network. They're not required to disclose their donors either since they're a 501c group. So we can't be sure exactly who's funding them, but if their board of directors is any indication, then it isn't exactly a coalition of everyday average Americans. Their board includes millionaires, billionaires, Wall Street executives, and tobacco heirs. They've been criticized for running misinforming attack ads during the 2010 election cycle as well. The group also coordinates with the Republican Governors Association and with American Crossroads. And that brings us to numbers 3 and 4 on our list, American Crossroads. You may have heard of this group because it is Karl Rove's organization. Yes, that Karl Rove. Like the Chamber and American Action Network, the donations that Crossroads takes in from its nonprofit wing is anonymous. But they do have to report donations from their super PAC wing. Of the donations that were disclosed, 91% came directly from billionaires. Billionaires, 91%. Between those groups, that's over $97 million from corporations, millionaires, billionaires, and anonymous sources. Add in the $40 million that the Koch brothers organization, American for Prosperity, spent, and that's over $135 million spent directly on running misleading negative ads against Democrats or donating to Republicans. Again, it's corporations, millionaires, billionaires, and anonymous sources. So we've already established that a whole lot of money funding elections is anonymous. Some of it, though, is disclosed. And of the money that's disclosed, take a look at how wealthy people are funding these outside spending groups. From 2006 to 2010, the number of people donating over $100,000 to outside spending groups more than doubled. Over 75% of the money from these millionaires and billionaires goes to conservative causes. In fact, in 2004 and 2006 combined, over $18 million of the conservative money came from one person, a Texas man worth about $500 million named Bob Perry. You may have heard of him as being the primary financer of Swift Boat Veterans for Truth in 2004. So that's part one of why my co-founder Jeremy Whalen and I started PACmen. We're tired of millionaires, billionaires, and corporations financing outside spending groups. We're tired of them saying whatever they want in misleading ads with no repercussions. Most of all, we're tired of a system that allows it to happen. We're tired of it, so we're going to work to change it. With your help, we can run ads exposing these organizations for what they are, and we can support candidates that will fight to change the system which allows the super wealthy and corporations to manipulate our elections.